Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into another election update video. We've got a very big day, obviously. The Trump-Elon interview happening tonight. Trump possibly announcing he's coming back to X, at least in a limited capacity. We're not sure, but apparently the interview is going to be streamed on Donald Trump's Twitter account, or X account, I should say. And so that'll be happening tonight. I don't know if it'll also be streamed on Elon's, but they made a point to say it's going to be streamed on Trump's account. Obviously, he's only sent one post since being able to return and getting reinstated to X, and that was the mugshot photo of Trump. But what you can see, this is the big stuff I want to talk about right now. Trump has announced his 20 core promises to the American people. You know, a lot of this is fluff, obviously, but I'm going to go through all of it and talk about Trump's core 20 promises on what he wants to get done when it comes to him getting back into the White House. And I know some people were a little bit disappointed in 2016 when he got in, the lack of things that weren't completed. Obviously, Trump's someone new to politics. Everyone talks a big game, but then when they get in, it's overwhelming. It's a lot harder to do things. You don't have the relationships, whatever. That's why we think Trump's second term is going to be way more effective than his first. It's like anything, you know, when you're the president for 4 years, you've got that experience. It's going to be easier to go back in and hit the ground running and get more stuff done. So when it comes to Trump's president, by the way, I heard Kamala Harris was releasing her, core campaign stuff and promises and potential platform that she's going to be running on this week. And then we've got the DNC happening next week. So I don't know when that would be coming, but that's potentially coming as well this upcoming week. Maybe on Tuesday or Wednesday. But so here they are right here. You've got Trump. So the first 10 of them, I'll just go through these. Seal the border and stop the migrant invasion, of course. And so I guess I'll compare and contrast these with Kamala Harris and the Democrats. The Democrats will argue that they're going to be tough on immigration. They're going to seal the border. The difference is Trump wants deportation of the 10 million plus illegals in the country. Kamala Harris and the Democrats want amnesty because they could potentially gain voters from those illegals becoming citizens. That's a huge difference. And that's why Kamala Harris's immigration policy makes no sense. I think I'll spend a separate, I got like a freaking something in my eye. That's why Kamala Harris's policy makes no sense. You want to stop the illegal immigration, but you're rewarding 10 million illegals that are already in the country with citizenship. So what's the point of stopping it if you're just going to reward them with? So that's the whole issue with it. They won't deport anyone. The Democrats aren't running on that. Trump, I've said he needs to shut the border down completely. And by the way, Trump's just got a huge bargaining chip. All you really have to say when it comes to this migrant issue, look at what's happening in the UK. That is such a huge thing that I think will resonate with a lot of people when you see how the UK is treating their own natural-born citizens. You've got young white 19-year-old kids going to jail for tweeting emojis, and they let the migrants come in, and they're in gangs, and they go around looking for white people, and none of them get arrested. This is why it's such an issue. Just say, look at what's happening in the UK. We're on the brink of that with all of these illegals coming into the country. That's why we need to make sure. I mean, it's already happened in the major cities. If you're in a suburb or you're in a rural place, you're not going to feel it at all. But this is happening in the United States, at least to a degree, not nearly as bad, obviously, as the UK, for a number of different reasons. In America, we have different rights. People can defend themselves a little bit better, things like that. But obviously, sealing the border, that is definitely going to be a winning key for Donald Trump. We can look at this election and we can say, well, there's all these different things at play, but it's always going to come down to economy and immigration. Those are the two most important things. Trump wins both of them. That's why I have confidence Trump will win the election, because you look at the issues, you take everything else away. It's not abortion. That is not one of the top two issues. It is the economy and it is immigration. And that's why the Democrats have admitted and said, we do want a stronger border, because they have to say that. Like Biden was at -30 in terms of immigration approval rating. So they have to, I mean, that's why Kamala is detaching herself from that administration. She's like, no, I don't like those guys. I'm going to strengthen the border, things like that. Yeah, but you're granting all the illegals that are already in the country amnesty. That's something that Trump's not doing. carry out the largest deportation operation in American history. That's basically what I just said. I have heard there could be and there probably will be, obviously, complications about trying to do that with how widespread the illegal immigration is in the United States, with over 10 million potentially. It's going to be very hard to do. J.D. Vance came out and said they're going to start with the first million right away, right when they get in. But yeah, they're going to have to work with a lot of local governments to be able to get that done. So it is not easy when it comes to doing something like that. We could really, and I think this is going to happen, the Republicans winning the Senate and then also winning the House. If Trump wins and the Republicans get the executive branch, I think they'll get the House. And then the Senate, I for sure think they'll at least get 52 or 53 seats in that. End inflation, make America affordable again. Obviously, that's, just vague. You can't really end inflation. Well, I mean, I guess you can end it with deflation, like what happened in China. But, obviously we want inflation. Inflation is so scary, man. Whether you're a Democrat, Republican, the idea, I mean, look at Venezuela, where they have to pay like stacks of money. And I'm not saying that's going to happen in the United States, but it is the ultimate dystopia. You pay like this stack of money to afford a pack of peanuts. So it's like, and again, that's not going to happen in the United States, but I'm just saying the fact that we've had this crazy inflation due to a number of different things, the printing of more money being one of the top ones, maybe just a little bit hypocritical of me. We always seem to have major bull runs when we print a lot of money, but obviously there's a big sacrifice when it comes to that, and it doesn't seem like when it comes to inflation based on people's salaries, it's not like their salaries are going up because, inflation, really over the past 4 years, 25%, meaning that your dollar is now worth like 75 cents over the past 4 years during the Biden administration. And it's not just going to be because of Biden. Some of it also is the pandemic and also all of the stimulus checks just purely printing more money. But obviously, inflation has been so bad recently compared to when Trump was in office. It's such an easy thing for Trump to hit on. You've got Make America the dominant energy producer in the world by far. There's no reason we shouldn't be able to do that. I would like for Trump to talk about nuclear energy somewhere, but I didn't see that the first time I looked at it. Nuclear energy, I think the Democrats really don't like it, but I think it's probably the number one renewable energy source to look at when it comes to potentially transitioning. And if conservatives have embraced nuclear, I feel like more than Democrats, which is something rare. I mean, you definitely have the one-off scenarios like Chernobyl, but it does feel like nuclear. The problem with nuclear, it takes about 15 years to build a plant. It's a long, long process. Stop outsourcing and turn the U.S. into a manufacturing superpower. We would all agree with that. Large tax cuts for workers and no tax on tips. Obviously, that's what Kamala Harris said on Saturday in Nevada. And that was kind of like, that's the big policy in Nevada with all the tipping that happens in that state with Las Vegas that Trump originally said. And that's why everyone was like, this is a genius idea. And it's funny because I saw there were like Democrat, like New York Times and maybe Washington Post. By the way, I forgot to mention this. The Washington Post is running ads on X for Kamala Harris's campaign. So they'll do like a puff piece, article for Kamala Harris, and then they'll pay for advertisements. So you'll see the Washington Post, and it'll say Kamala Harris, she's gone through so much adversity. She's trying to become the first female president. And then it'll say in the top right, ad. So they're paying for, like, how does the Washington Post, who's supposedly unbiased, pay for ads for Kamala Harris, or her campaign's like paying for propaganda through the Washington Post? What a mess that is. But obviously, when it comes to the tax, Trump needs to hit them on Trump's tax cuts, which was part of the 2017 Jobs Act back in 2017, which cut taxes for everyone. It's ending in 2025. And the Democratic response will be, but if you make under $400K, your taxes aren't going to go up. That's ridiculous. All the taxes go up. And even now, if you live in California you make like $500K, that's really not that much money because of how bad inflation is. So this is huge. And they've said they're not going to keep Trump's tax cuts. They're going to change it in 2025 when they expire. So Trump wants to keep it going. So that is another thing there. You've also got defend our Constitution, Bill of Rights, fundamental freedoms, including freedom of speech. Yeah, so freedom of speech is a big one. Obviously, in terms of the 21st century, it's a little bit vague because, freedom of speech doesn't apply to the internet, things like that. Obviously, we've had the issue now with Elon Musk having to buy X and really open it up. But Yeah, freedom of speech is something that I'm sure a lot of liberals would love to be taken away. And a lot of it is they think that citizens are too dumb, they're too reckless, they shouldn't have full freedoms, the government should be in control, we should have a massive government. That appeals to a lot of women because it's like the government's their daddy and it can kind of control everything and it keeps them safe. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of them are liberal. But I mean, that's just a vague thing. Obviously, defend the Constitution. I'm sure most Democrats would agree with that, but there's a little bit of a difference of agreement when it comes to the freedom of speech on the internet. Many Democrats don't want that at all. We've seen that with X and how Elon's taken over and them hating Elon Musk. Prevent World War III, restore peace in Europe and the Middle East, and build a Great Iron Dome missile defense shield. Yeah, I wonder if the United States will ever really invest in some type of huge. I mean, we're in such a good spot with the ocean surrounding us, anyways. But when I don't know how effective something like an Iron Dome would be when they've got the crazy fast missiles that go like. That it's hard to defend. But in general, when it comes to that number 8 core promise, I would say restoring peace in Europe is something that Trump can definitely run on over any Democrat. With what's happening, I did see that Ukraine took some territory in Russia. That could be huge news for the Ukrainians potentially mounting an offensive to try and Zelensky realizing, remember, Zelensky met with Trump. Zelensky understanding if there's going to be peace, you're going to have some type of land to leverage against Russia because it seems like Russia obviously is going to want some land in Ukraine. So if you take some of their land, you can leverage that and say, we'll give you this back if we get this back and things like that. It makes it easier to negotiate with rather than Russia just having those 2 eastern territories and then saying we want half of Ukraine and then we'll be done. So this Ukraine taking that land in Russia could help Trump and Zelensky negotiate with Putin for a peace settlement. Both Zelensky and Putin have said if Trump gets in, they're open to peace, and they're already thinking about talking to each other, even if when Trump becomes the president-elect before he even gets in, that war might be solved. So that could be huge. And then when it comes to the Democrats solving that war, I mean, it could work itself out for sure, but obviously they have a much different approach to where they view some type of peace deal with Russia as appeasement, and they don't want that at all. So the issue is if you have that war going on and then you get a war in the Pacific potentially with Taiwan and China, you could have 2 superpowers at war and the country starts spiraling. We've already got seemingly the United States government blaming Iran for basically everything that's happened recently, including trying to assassinate Trump. Trump's campaign gets hacked possibly by them. So that's a Middle East narrative, and the Middle East right now is totally unstable. There's probably going to be more stuff coming out of there, unfortunately. So if there's a hot war there that happens, it's going to spiral out of control. So Trump needs to say, Putin and Zelensky have both said they're going to be, they're open to peace here with me as president. I'm going to influence this. And I'm not just saying that to, say, oh yeah, I'm going to create peace. Just get me in and vote for me. They're saying they're open to it and they know it's coming. And that's why Zelensky met with me. And this narrative that, I just hate Ukraine. Why would Zelensky be meeting with me before I'm even the president again if I hate Ukraine this bad? I just want peace within Europe. And that's what Trump wants. And then the other problem is, and I wish Trump would say this, we need to detach ourselves from NATO, if not like a physical detach to where we leave the agreement, at least a psychological detach to where right now Europe is controlling the narrative when it comes to NATO, not the United States, which I think is ridiculous. When it comes to the U.S., our biggest needs don't really coincide with many of those countries in Europe just because of based on where we're at geographically. We're not in the same place as those European countries. Listen, if the United States were located right next to Germany, I would be saying, yes, Russia is a huge threat. The fact that they're invading Ukraine is a big problem because that's near our country, and we're going to do significant things about that to prevent it from happening. That's not the case. We've got Europe, we've got the Atlantic Ocean, and then we've got the United States. So we're in a different spot. So the NATO narrative, it's different. NATO in and of itself was not meant to last this long. It was built to counter the Soviet Union, which you can absolutely understand considering the Soviet Union was huge when NATO existed, the late 40s, early 50s. That was right after they took all of those Eastern European countries after they had defeated Germany in World War II. So you can understand why NATO was put in place, but at this point with the Soviet Union, falling in 91, it just seems like you've got all these European countries benefiting from the big bully, if you will, which is the United States, based on how much money we spend on military. And obviously, if you're Russia and you're China and you're seeing the United States, do you really want to go up against that? Do you really want to invade a NATO country? Of course, you could say, well, that helps keep peace there, but it also puts the obligation on the United States as the number one enemy no matter what, because we're going to be spending the most money, and that gives us more enemies when it comes to those countries like a Russia, like a China, things like that. I'm going to start going through these faster. I'm sorry. We also do have end the weaponization of government against the American people. So yeah, I think that would include firing a bunch of the current people within D.C., and that kind of relates to Trump's original plan, just because it's so lopsided, so liberal. I mean, look at what's even happening to Trump with all of these charges and the assassination attempt. They try and put him in jail. And what they're doing is really, really sad. So Trump knows it, and maybe we'll get some movement in terms of that. We need that. The Republicans need the House, and they need the Senate preferably. Stop the migrant crime epidemic, demolish the foreign drug cartels, crush gang violence. Yeah, so that's very hard to do. If you're talking about like striking areas in Mexico to try and get rid of the cartels, I mean, listen, it's a huge problem because their drugs are leaking across the border, and Vivek Ramaswamy definitely ran on that. I remember him saying that several times when he was running for president. So I wonder how that dynamic would work, but if you could somehow eliminate that, I'm sure Mexico would love it, and it would certainly help them be a safer country. I mean, Mexico does have some very nice cities. They're small and they're hard to find because they've got the cartels, and it's a big crime problem. If you just got rid of those, Mexico could be a better place to live, and then that would disincentivize a lot of these people trying to get across the border if Mexico becomes safer. Of course, that's a very, very hard thing considering we do not own land in Mexico, so striking those areas is very, it would have to be something that's coordinated with their government. Rebuild our cities, including Washington, D.C., making them safe, clean, and beautiful again. I'm sure that's, we all want the bigger cities to get better. Saying something like that, though, it's really not going to do anything. The only thing that would get the major bigger cities like a Chicago, San Francisco cleaned up, you need to elect Republican leadership, Republican, mayors, maybe Republican governor of these states, and that's just never going to happen. They're going to keep electing Democrats, and Democrats are ridiculously soft on crime, especially minority crime, so it's just a never-ending cycle. Strengthen and modernize our military, making it without question the strongest and most powerful in the world. So this is funny because, you would think Democrats who look at our military and the fact that our budget is just so massive, like the idea is you could cut our military budget in half and we would still have the number one budget in the world, and then you could spend that money on whatever you want. Obviously, I don't want to do that, but it's funny because the Democrats don't want to do that either. I mean, look at Obama and Biden. The military budget just keeps going up and up and up. Yeah, they've said, I remember them hinting a few times about possibly bringing it down, but it never happens. It just goes to show you how powerful the military-industrial complex is, to where, I mean, it's constant money being dumped into the military. Democrat, Republican, who's ever in office, it doesn't matter. Number 13, keep the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. Number 14, fight to protect Social Security and Medicare with no cuts. 15, cancel the electric vehicle mandate. So I think that's one where Republicans might be swimming up water a little bit when it comes to the electrical vehicles. I think they're probably going to, at some point, force us to only have electrical vehicles. I know people will say, well, that's dystopian, that's really bad. And no, I agree. But the way they're going to swing it is you've got all of the drunk driving, you've got all of the accidents. Guys, with how good our technology is getting, at a certain point, it always just exponentially explodes, and that's what it's done, to where it goes on a straight line up in terms of the innovation, and that's exactly what's happened. Look at the iPhone 1 compared to where we are now. That's just like a 12, 14-year time period. It's just ridiculous how advanced we're getting, and so all of the cars will be on the same network. They'll all be electric. No gasoline, and they will all communicate with each other, and they'll all be self-driving. And that's a very hard thing for people to accept, because theoretically the government could shut your car down, and would U.S. citizens really agree to something like that? The way they'll swing it is, well, there's all these road accidents, there's all these people that die, and this is probably coming in like 2040 or 2050, but I'm just saying eventually you're going to have a situation where they develop something where all the cars communicate with each other, and it's impossible to have an accident unless there's like this crazy malfunction, and they cut accidents down to like like barely any every year in the United States, with basically no road fatalities because, it's robots. They can't do wrong. They're all on the same network. They know where all the cars are and things like that. And so I think, unfortunately, that will be coming at some point. The way that they take people's rights is through safety. It's always through safety. If you want the country to be safer, we need to take X, we need to take Y. Remember the Patriot Act? It's always through safety. That's the one thing that people will agree to have their rights removed. And that's another thing to where it's for safety, because you eliminate the potential of a drunk driver, killing innocent people. You eliminate just crashes in general. You've got cars on highways going 60 miles per hour. You are taking a risk when you do that, and potentially they could eliminate that risk if they've all got robots, basically AI systems in cars, driving the cars connected to a same network to where it's impossible for the cars to get into an accident with each other unless something crazy happens. I think that's coming, unfortunately, when it comes to that. Cut federal funding for any school pushing critical race theory, radical gender ideology, and others. Yeah, so that's a big one, obviously. That has to do with children and the manipulation of children. I also think when it comes to colleges, this is something, it's like, you've got to somehow fight this if you are conservatives, but they just completely control all the institutions. So that's why, obviously women go to college more than men. There's a lot of reasons why, in general, younger girls and that are turning 18, 19, coming in age to vote, they're all liberal. I think one of them, though, is the college environment and the studies that they've done on 95% of the professors being liberal. To me, that is crazy. Obviously, that's not a correct representation of how the demographics are in the United States, to where we're very, split. It's not like we're 80% liberal. It's just that the professors are so far left, and that's why a lot of the younger kids, specifically girls, because again, they go to college at a much higher rate than boys for a number of reasons. But that's why a lot of them are liberal. That's not the only reason, though. There are plenty of other reasons. I agree with that. But you've also got keep men out of women's sports. Oh my God. Well, that just canceled my vote. I'm not going to vote for Trump now. Trump is so sexist for saying that. You're saying keep men out of, obviously, guys, listen, this is what I think of the whole gender stuff and men and women. If you have testosterone in your body, that's basically a steroid. If you're competing against biological women, that should disqualify you. Testosterone gives you a significant advantage over women. That's my opinion on that. Deport pro-Hamas radicals and make our college campuses safe and patriotic. Yeah, I guess. That's not really a big one there. Secure our elections, including same-day voting, voter identification, paper ballots, and proof of citizenship. So, obviously he's saying an overhaul of the voting. It's going to be very hard to do something like that. I don't know about the same-day voting, because if Republicans want to get rid of mail-in ballots, which obviously you wouldn't, it's not 100% getting rid of them. The problem is that the way the Democrats use them, to where you've got perfectly able-bodied people, that are 25 years old using mail-in ballots for convenience. That's the problem. Obviously, if you're in a wheelchair or something, that's why mail-in ballots are there. If you're overseas serving, that's why mail-in ballots are there. It's not for like the 32-year-old, just perfectly healthy person who's just lazy and wants to mail it in. That's not the original purpose of it, but that's what it's become because of convenience. They don't want to go, it's one day, So what do you do with that if you really want same-day voting, everyone going to the polls at the exact same time? That, to me, that's something that's going to be hard to do. Maybe you make it 2 days, I don't know, but then that might open it to more voter fraud. It's very hard to work something like that out. But obviously, Glenn Youngkin was able to accomplish it at least partially in Virginia. So maybe we could do something and really have just a safer process to where people trust it. And you've got, definitely you have to show your ID, things like that. That would help strengthen the democracy and everything like that, to where people will trust our elections if we do have something like that. And to be honest with you, Republicans were trying to do that, and that would have been great if that act, the SAFE Act, would have been passed, but the Democrats said no way. And then you've got Unite Our Country by bringing it to record levels of success. Obviously, just a puff piece there at the end, not surprising. That's kind of what some of these bullet points are in general, but really not surprised by any of these, 20 core promises when it comes to Trump's presidency. Seems pretty standard for Trump, and definitely, obviously, this is what we want. I will, if Kamala Harris, I'd like to see Kamala Harris release a counter 20 core promises to kind of see Of course, they're all going to, say, try and put it in the best light and the best verbiage to make themselves look really good. But there's going to be some clear differences. And obviously with Trump, one of the clear differences is the deportation of the illegal immigrants that are in the country, not giving them amnesty. That's a huge difference from like a Kamala Harris promise, which would be undoubtedly, she's going to say, we're going to get tougher on the border. We're going to go after the cartels. That's a big thing that the Democrats try and say, because technically it's not the illegals in the country. They can shift blame and say, no, we're going to go after the cartels in Mexico and things like that, and try and, strengthen the border that way, which is understandable. But the big issue is, and honestly, you could argue that it's kind of unfair to immigrants right now that are in Mexico trying to come to America. If you're going to strengthen the border but give all the illegals amnesty, if you're an immigrant in Mexico trying to come to America illegally, and you're like, well, you've just strengthened the border, so now I'm not able to enter illegally, but my friend just went in a month ago, and you're giving him amnesty? Like, but you see how it's just their promises make no sense. So you're going to strengthen the border by trying to stop illegal immigration, but you're going to give all the illegals that recently entered amnesty. But guys, those are just Trump's 20 promises. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.